Okay, yeah, I just want to include real quick. Um, I'm going to do another one of what I'm fixing to talk about now, with all my lighting on a little later tonight. It's not even sunrise yet. It's starting to get close to 6 a.m. But anyway, yeah. So I want to talk about the Michael Jackson and Trump saying, "Make America Great Again," and it ultimately gets to all the information of 1972 and COVID ID 19 being, I'm not sure what year it began in, but I think it's somewhere around, maybe somewhere around, maybe kind of like the end of 2010 when Ford Explorer Sport Track was discontinued. It very well be, exactly that of J.D. Powers. In any case, yeah, so it seemed to be, the Explorer band, in my mind, it's kind of like the browser, um, and the Ford Explorer Sport Track about the short bed. It is the shortest short bed. Yeah, yeah. That was like one of the cooler designs. And it was discontinued and all that. In my mind, it seemed to be really even something about maybe even Santa Ana. Now that I think about it, um, involving pi r squared and alphanumeric linguistic alphanumerics and pi r squared that presents, using the agreed definition um, of its intended use, yet it uses the square, knowing what it means, and this using analytical and symbolic that way, uh, of the square actually being 290 degrees, ultimately creating the second zero, the second O, like radius being used to find the diameter. And it's like the figure 8 and infinity on a zoom lens in a linguistic alphanumeric way, and in pronunciation involving, linguistic alphanumerics is the thing about it. So it's almost like the power and principle. Um, yeah, so it seemed to be, more so a pronunciation more so on the principle side of analytical and symbolic, yeah. So the square about the pi r squared factor is like something in that way. But I just want to include, the fact that Michael Jackson's song seemed to be, that getting to, make America great again, and the thing about the Great Britain flag being the same colors of red, white, and blue, and the information in 1972. Michael Jackson specifically of the Jackson 5. Um, yeah, seemingly thing about them. Yeah. Um, yeah, maybe 1977 would be closer to the Michael Jackson's Off the Wall. Um, with the Don't Stop Till You Get Enough Yet on a Destiny is probably more so the Jackson 5 in 1972, leading to, the thing about it, yeah. So the Blame It on the Boogie, it's like the Bogie and the Boogie, okay? It's like the pi r squared in the Boolean. You've heard, the thing about boo, uh, as maybe a negative side of what an audience would suggest as what performance meant. Um, yeah, the Boolean chart is like a characterization of sets of 6 as compared to HTTP colon double forward slash band sequencing characterization of sets of 4 computer programming and computer language. Yet the Boolean chart represents audio, digital audio, in that way. I'm going to have to do a little bit of homework about it, but it seems to be the significance of George W. Bush and all the information ultimately added to preservatives and byproducts. And the thing about, the transition from William Jefferson Clinton and Al Gore, and the 1992 inaugural ball hosted by Chevy Chase seemed to be the transition into the George W. Bush administration, and the significance of Dr. Pepper celebrating its 23-year anniversary celebration, and the 23 ingredients. 20 being, okay, alphanumerically, the TWENTY is the alphanumerics 107, which is actually the county road I'm on now, or military, or quantum, or diners club. Not limited to, but the thing with this is that the W seems to be the thing about even like George W. Bush's middle initial. Almost like in a sense of that Dr. Pepper reflects, the one and only FDA approved thing about consumption. You've heard it before: Reader's Digest, Consumer Report Price Index, electronic consumer, consumption in the way of like in food. And the thing with this is that Dr. Pepper's the one that seemed to be the thing about even the year 2023, or GMC is raising the bar. 2023, CEO and GMC being 23, like a corporate executive officer in General Motors Corporation, ultimately even J.D. Powers in that way. Yeah, so it seemed to be the thing about that as well. But in any case, I was wanting to talk about Michael Jackson, blame it on the boogie, because the difference between the bogey and the boogie is, on par term of golf, yet, in pilot and aviation, and the accuracy of pilots, normally affirmative action, suggesting that a bogey would be, something that would be considered as potentially an issue. In any case, as compared to a boogie, it seemed to be the pi r squared thing about alphanumerics, linguistic alphanumerics, or, Los Angeles being 109, the 109 being like a governor, or a governor as president. 109 is 110. Ultimately getting to, 247 degree, which really is a 8 a.m. or an 8 p.m. position on a 12-hour clock. Yet both of those being AM or PM is the 247 degree. And it seemed to be the thing about the Los Angeles area code 213 about telepathic brainwaves, as compared to the area code, which is the latest, of 323. And the thing with this is that I'll actually have to think about the combination, but it's like the alphanumerics of like Los Angeles being 109, yet it's the area code 213. And governor is president, Los Angeles is president. Los Angeles is 110. And 213 being Los Angeles, the area code, applied to the alphanumerics of president being 110, is, the alphanumerics of 323, which is, I think, the latest area code. Yet it represents, like Dr. Pepper at the same time, 3.1416 in its own way, and the 3 point of Mercedes-Benz. And the alphanumerics of 323 is like 20 being 107 and 3 being 56. And the thing about 3 point and yeah, 23, yeah. And the thing about 3 being the alphanumerics of 56 or paper made, and it ultimately gets to a method of banking involving like 56 is 10. But anyway, I want to get right back to the Michael Jackson thing about the destiny thing and the blame it on the boogie, because it seemed to be that song is like referring to Moses about the one phrase, and I saw the lightning lead me. It's really almost like, Michael Jackson's thing of like Houston and Egypt and, the alphanumerics of Harris and a transition between, quite a bit about, bibliography and the King James and the Mormon Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, the American religion not being a question of alphanumerics or American equating to Israel, which is, the thing about, Israel being like, America's ally as an ally, not that it's anything or a misappropriation or allocation. I mean, automatically, in my mind, Israel as being 64 is an American, and, Christianity is automatically, not necessarily the idea of, immigration, custom enforcement, or vice president network, when in fact, truthfully, I mean, at this point, how could it have not have already been that? And, maybe, the thought of like it's used exactly that way, or what intellectual property only means. It seemed to be that the Israeli flag having the horizontal parameters, above and below the 6 point star. 6 point being alphanumerics 138, or telepathic angel. And, one triangle on a pi r squared factor, applying itself to itself twice is like a 6 point star. The triangle being an electronic schematic symbol of the delta force. And likewise, the biggest mouth of the river. And a misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi again, once again, on and on. about the ISS and SSI and International Superstar and Supplemental Security Income. In any case, so like anyway, Michael Jackson sings that song, Jackson 5, okay, on the Destiny, Blame It on the Boogie, and automatically it's like the pi r squared factor of using the diameter to find, using a radius to get the diameter, and like it's the circle of a bogey of a degree definition of intended use, yet on an analytical involving, like what would be more on a Stargate side, and on the expenditure side as well of, my thought of human capital being itemized going through the circuit. I mean, for real, symbolic on a Stargate side and analytical that way, and presents both circles being like the infinity on a zoom lens or two 90-degree lines involving the infinite lines. But anyway, he sings that song in Jackson 5, and that one phrase, and I saw the lightning leave me. Well, Moses is on a plateau, and it's up the burning bush, okay? Yet George Bush, his name is George Bush, yet Michael Jackson is singing the song, Trump is saying, Make America Great Again. And, all the colors about the Great Britain's flag, it's like red, white, and blue, but a different design. Yet the Great Seal of the United States is below the pyramid, and all of a sudden the pyramid being Egypt and other places, and some pyramids have like a flat plane surface, almost like a plateau. Not necessarily what I'm thinking about, although it does give that impression about the eye above the pyramid and that one little section on top having a flat side as compared to the little triangle with the eye in it right above it. And the eye is identified as a deity. Some people might think of it as maybe a godhead, not necessarily a burial determined of the mind's eye. But in any case, so like I was wanting to think about that because, the United States Treasury identifies all that information about the eye being, the deity is the word that's used to identify it. In any case, when Michael Jackson is referring to, and I saw the lightning leave me, and I was like really thinking about it because, I'm like looking right at it. And then, years later, on the Off the Wall, seemed to be thinking about walking on graphite, and the graphite being used, as I'm assuming, in the place of like birth certificates, of, ultimately a lot of other information. But when Michael Jackson is singing that one phrase about, and I saw the lightning leave me, and all the other information of that one content, but that one phrase of the lyric in the song, it seemed to be like Moses on the plateau of the burning bush coming down with two tablets and lightning actually engraving, in stone, two tablets. And it's like the two tablets is like, Texas, New Mexico power. Moses being 71, like the Alpha is 71 in Pearland. And Moses is coming down, okay, from a plateau that God had etched in stone using lightning to etch the Ten Commandments on two tablets, okay? Yet at a certain point, it's like center point energy, and Agent 99, the thing about, Technicolor being used in the movie Ten Commandments, is really the thing about it. Technicolor was predominantly used enough and almost like a demanded standard, but still it was Technicolor. As far as I know, or the film actually given the impression and using Technicolor in the pastels, that way of Technicolor, because I think all the Technicolor are a little bit more hue and saturation of the pastel, but it's still pastel, a categorization, almost like an easement of like intellectual property, like even what de facto would actually mean based upon lifespan as a transition in that way. And that's the way I actually see Harris, and being the Alphanumerics of 73 Union, I'm not real sure, but like I'd mentioned before, although the State of the Union address is like the Alphanumerics 192, like the Transfiguration is in the book of Thessalonians, ultimately the Lord Jesus Christ resurrecting at the third day and going to Mount Olives, which is the plateau, and then ascending from the plateau into the sky and re-entering heaven, and it's called the Transfiguration, the Alphanumerics 192 in the book of Thessalonians. Well, anyway, so like Moses and Michael Jackson talking about, and I see the lightning lead me. It's like Moses on the plateau of the burning bush, like George W. Bush. I mean, for real. And the alphanumerics of 23 being the W, and the Dr. Pepper thing about, in my mind, automatically, the carbon footprint of a carbonated drink. And Dr. Pepper is the one, it seemed to be the only one that's celebrated the 23-year anniversary of the 23 ingredients, and it is 23 ingredients. Yet 20 is actually 107, and 3 is 3 or 56, numerically and alphanumerically. And, the 3 ingredients, additives, preservatives, and byproducts, is in my mind when I realized that it had been years before I'd realized that I hadn't seen any FDA approved anything, whether it be dry good or the carbonated drink, of, additives, preservatives, and byproducts. And at the end of William Jefferson Clinton and Al Gore, and I always include, Chevy Chase about the 1992 inaugural ball, because, of all the alphanumerics of Houston and Chase, it's like so very much about the alphanumerics, seemingly, of, Houston, Texas, Electronic Power Way International, and Selective Service. And knowing that the alphanumerics of 36 and 64 seem to be, the only two that really have the significance, equating to, some alphanumeric equation of 181 in that way. But, the subconscious minus Chase was automatically my thing, thinking about, the mental telepathy minus God being the Holy Spirit, Secret Service, and Jesus Christ that way. Now I'm limited to, but anyway, that's my thing about the subconscious side of the alphanumerics, and, the 36, and also, 36 being like oil and GIT, geospatial information technology, and the 36 thing about quite a bit. But anyway, so anyway, Michael Jackson is saying it, and I saw the lightning leave me, and it seemed to be the thing that Moses of the burning bush on the plateau, and coming down with 2 tablets that God had etched, using a lightning bolt, etching the 10 commandments on 2 tablets. And he's coming down, okay? And everyone's having their thing about worshiping a golden calf. A golden calf, okay? And it seemed to be like things going on about even, and there's a little bit of concern in my mind real quick, and I'm not trying to have one is what the deal is, okay? It's just that, the laughter of that one song of Duran Duran, and the alphanumerics seem to be of syllable. It seemed to be almost like the YYZ of the rock band Rush and On the Moving Pictures, okay? The thing with this is that Duran Duran also sings a song of, the James Bond movie, A View to a Thing, and I don't even want to say it, really. And there's like another band involving something about, Valley of the Kings, and something about even a movie of Oblivion with Tom Cruise, yeah. Oblivion, and in a certain valley in that movie, there's something about that one, and that would almost have to be, in my mind, the Valley of the King thing, and the band. But in any case, it was like a location. I don't know where it's at, but it seemed to be something about, where another place that was involved, where it's actually taken to. And Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin, being, the song of connectivity, there at that scene in the movie Oblivion with Tom Cruise, okay? It's the thing about Robert Plant. I have my flower, I have my power. I have a woman who knows. And my thing about Robert Plant, after, Led Zeppelin, and the thing about, House of the Holy, and Robert Plant saying, and his name being Robert, or the alphanumerics of 78, or, the thing about, zip code, or the thing escrow, and like a heart god, or whatever the case may be. And ultimately, my thing involving what seemed to be somehow involving, the Hindenburg. Anyway, so all that connectivity's there in my mind. But anyway, yeah, so anyway, Michael Jackson is singing it I Saw the Lightning Leave Me, and it's in the song Blame It on a Boogie. And it seemed to be thinking about the accuracy of pilot terminology being the Bogie, of on par golf terminology. Of a type of characterization of score, yet the accuracy of pilots identifying a bogey and aviation of the Air Force, It seems to be almost like the pi r square factor of a bogey being a boogie. The difference being on a golf course or like in a jet. I mean, for real. And the pi r squared seemed to be the deal about Los Angeles and linguistic alphanumerics that way. Of the alphanumerics of 109 being the governor's president. And ultimately, in my mind, whether it's AM or PM being 8 AM or 8 PM being, the 8. Or infinity at a 90-degree right angle of like a perfect 10-10 vision, in a planetarium using the stars that way. Of the tribe of scribes, I mean, even back in biblical times, it seemed to be the significance of Robert E. Reuben. In a way, his name E. Reuben, it's like E and Reuben being, the alphanumerics is 64, and with the E, like it's spelled in the King James Version Bible of one of the 12 tribes of Israel, being Reuben, the tribe of scribes. And somewhere in my mind, the significance in that way, being the tribe of scribes, ultimately getting into light scribe beyond, graphite being used for like the pace of footprint on a birth certificate, going through a copier process, the thing about a method of banking involving paper made, or even fingerprints, and getting into the light scribe side of biometrics, leaving the thought of like a metal particle being used, even in metallic paint, and it's referred to as a pewter, but it's graphite that's used, and even the paint of metallic paint that's categorized as a pastel metallic paint called a pewter. And all that connectivity of like paint and color, technicolor and pastel, and like transportation being the thought of like the alphanumerics of 200 or the bicentennial quarter or the 200-year celebration or the Lord Jesus Christ or a plenipotentiary, and all the alphanumerics about 200, and even the thing about the Statue of Liberty and a bicentennial drummer that way, and all that information that seemed to be automatically linked to Benjamin Franklin and like Philadelphia and the Declaration of Independence, and reflecting even electrical science, the International Electronic Engineering, and Benjamin Franklin finding that kite with a key on it. I think it's actually Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Edison. I'm actually trying to think. I think it's Thomas Edison. Doubting Thomas. What is the Doubting Thomas? Is it Thomas Edison, the Doubting Thomas? Or is it really about a Tom and a drummer? I'm actually trying to place it real quick, but it seemed to be somewhere of the Einstein thing about the E equal MC squared. And the thing about Benjamin Franklin, I think, was flying a kite in the middle of the night during a storm and lightning striking it. And I think that was the same thing about Thomas Edison, or if that's really the issue of the chapter, Winners and Losers. And McDonald's Golden Arches that way, of like both half cycles above, yet it's gold, and everyone knows that. It's like GMC's raising a bar, about the price of gold going up and down, like one cycle being half above and half below. The center line of oscillation. There's your 1 cycle per second in oscillation that way. But anyway, Michael Jackson sings that song. It's like, and I saw the lightning leave me, and my baby just can't take her eyes off me. And don't blame it on sunshine, don't blame it on moonlight, don't blame it on the good times, blame it on the boogie. And it seems to be the difference between like a color code that seems to be automatically involving Abraham Lincoln, not even shadow government, and like constitutional law being the black book, and state statutes annotated likewise, the black side. And it seemed to be, all that jurisprudence involving the black back. Ultimately, one word of warehousing being repudiation. And it seemed to be what it's linked about television programming. That one word of warehousing being linked to real estate and inverting state statutes annotated, not limited to like Texas state statutes, but the Black Book as state statutes, like, in the law library. And that one word of repudiation of warehousing, and what the deal is about jurisprudence with the black back, or litigation de facto on recent habeas corpus, or medical power of attorney, using fiction and real estate as a deed restriction. Kind of like the idea of like, Marcus Welby and Quincy, somewhere in between what seemed to be, the real issue between like, something like, Marcus Welby, or, this, even sand software is ultimately what it's really getting to, being more so on the neighborhood side, whether degreed or not degreed. Yet of the golf course of Ulysses S. Grant, and like a presidential debate, representing, neighborhoods or categorization of urban or suburban, or, just, something on this planet other than that, I don't really like referring to, the idea of a third world as in the automatic region 0, just because, 0 and 1 is a binary number. But it seemed to be, that region 0 is obviously the thing about a 9 degree of an equator and all that information. But, back to the Michael Jackson thing about I saw the light and leave me. It seemed to be that it's the Moses on the plateau of the burning bush, yeah. And some of the information in the songs, even going to, the thing about Michael Jackson on the Off the Wall, which seemed to be the thing about the graphite as well. Ultimately, even, the footprint on the birth certificate and the when and where about, something about Off the Wall. But really, what I'm really thinking is that Off the Wall is really about that telepathic blueprint and television series Leave Without a Trace. And, ultimately, Lockheed Martin symbol, or whether it's just the font size of a exit ramp on, an interstate highway, being, like the font size of like Lockheed Martin or Star Trek, the design of an exit ramp from a highway, a freeway, and the font size of, the arrows of like Lockheed Martin or like, Star Trek, I mean, for real. And the Mork from Ork, Robin Williams thing about the shots about 909 and Mr. Spock on Star Trek actually doing the same thing about, the V-twin, even Richard Nixon. Different, but it's like the McDonald's Golden Arches and the half cycle above and below of, a degree level representation, a considerable participation side by side applied to the one cycle, looking like the electronic schematic fish. Okay? And, the thing about the difference between Richard Nixon using both hands with, the peace sign representing the V, as compared to, like, Mr. Spock in Star Trek and, like, Robin Williams, Mork and Mindy. And it seemed to be the word of, like, mending and the U.S. constitutional amendments amending and that spore stone of a spore stone from the ocean. And it almost seems to be that song of, like, Hillsong. In Ocean's Deep, where feet may fail, it seemed to be the thing about the spore stone. And, the thing about really what seemed to be the issue of, like, making a grade beyond a local area network of internet protocol of maritime law. And it seemed to be the American Idol and the amphibious thing about J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, at a minimum, going beyond even surfing the internet and what a wide area network is or is not. And, like, a transition from maritime law to, like, aviation, FCC, and how the redundant frequency is, like, the issue of whether or not if it's a grid only based upon signal strength, and or maybe if it's the issue of altitude of an American Idol and maybe the actual altitude of clearance, which really is an issue of clearance, not necessarily interference in a way of like trees or other buildings, and maybe that's really the truth about what frequency is and signal strength that way. Not having, some idea of, like, even the information saying, hey, we kind of let you know, like, we interrupt our regularly scheduled programming so that we may bring you this special message, this special report. And it's almost like, like a political science drum major conduct report of the Freddie Prinze, Chico stick, and the actual color code of the Chico stick. Yet Freddie Prinze, being like the ethnic background, yet at the same time, it's like the television series Chico and a Man once again. And the thing about, even the alphanumerics of man, MAN being 28 or the bank, and ultimately money being the categorization, and alphanumeric value of 72 and Kobe ID 19. And that movie with Chevy Chase, Best Defense, and a biblical scripture that money is a defense. And it's also like Kobe ID 19 is the best defense. Anyway, so like all that connectivity is like now. In any case, so it seemed to be the thing about Moses being on a plateau, coming down of the burning bush, George W. Bush in that way, Dr. Pepper of the alphanumerics of 23, 20 being like 107, the kind of road I'm on now, yeah, military, quantum, and Diners Club. And it seemed to be the Santa Ana thing about, like you heard your whole life. Santa Claus is coming to town. It's like, come down a chimney with a bag back again, it's just kind of like, really, or is it really remember the Alamo? And think about, a black trash bag in the toilet, like a black hole in space exploration is the idea, a result of, like, you remember the Alamo, and, like, a lot's going on, and, and ultimately, an Abraham Lincoln night vision shadow government Stargate program, I'm assuming, is almost if it's just like a demand requirement, now it seems to be, leading to the idea of black hole in space, really quantum and Diners Club about the bag. What Diners Club is ultimately, some idea. You notice the similarities in tempo and notation, or some idea like a teleprompting speed reader, a better bubble teleprompting speed reader, magazine. It's kind of like the Elton John song, oh yeah. Anyway, it's kind of like the Elton John song about that. She has electric boots, an amyloidosis viscosity centrifuge. I read it in a better bubble teleprompting speed reader magazine. Oh ho, Benny and the Jets. It's almost like a Sarbanes-Oxley thing about Sox compliance and the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox. Chicago and Boston being two of the 12 Federal Reserve banks that had a color code of, the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox, both baseball teams, and the color of, like, the red blood cell and the white blood cell. And it seemed to be the thing quite a bit, although, Sarbanes-Oxley financial instruments is always almost like, automatically Texas Instruments and a calculator about some information. And We International, like a financial instrument as a musician. So, ultimately, it seemed to be, all that connectivity. It's almost like the Elton John song. She has electric boots. And amyloidosis viscosity centrifuge. I read it in a better bubble teleprompting speed reader magazine. Oh, but Benny and the Jets, and it's kind of like a little bit of humor, but really, with all the information, for real, and what's really already happened about certain information, it has, you may have heard as a make-believe situation. Not knowing would be maybe not the thought of maybe knowing that being made to believe is experiencing something that would be considered maybe a little bit more than believing and actually knowing based upon experience. Not even believing it would be more so maybe not experiencing something about that. In any case, so like, all that seemed to be, a little bit of humor, but, it's really almost not funny at the same time, thinking that laughing at or even laughing really at anything with this kind of stuff going on, it's like, really, it's not supposed to be anything wrong with being in a good mood, or even laughing or smiling, and it just sometimes just seems to be involving a certain situations that seem to be like it's almost like not the thing to do. It's like really, extremely not cool, frustrating, not thinking that, in any case, so like, I wanted to include that because it seemed to be the significance of, likewise, Michael Jackson and the, off the wall, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, because it seemed to be the thing about the presidential inaugural ball and the bubble, okay, because in the video, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, there's like a glass bubble and what looks like a glass ball, and they all look like balls, but one of them is a bubble, and that is terminology used on the New York Stock Exchange. It's giving reference like, get while the getting's good. It's like a trend. The anticipation of experience, knowing it's more than likely what it's going to be, and when it is, it's like, how long is it going to last? As compared to what some people might consider inside trading information. It's not the same, but, really, if it's only the issue of whether it's degreed or non-degreed, it's like every day inside trading information. It's a daily standard practice. Yet, and it seems to be only if it's accepted, or if it's the idea of an acronym involving a circuit, or intellectual of a duration, or the thing about, a trend, or what's called a bubble. It's called a bubble, okay? And it's like, like a Bubblicious. Hey, that's an awesome Bubblicious portfolio. Are you dyslexic? Or, the thought of like finally meeting the requirements of the high society on the Concord. And, the Concord almost like, like logic circuitry of Reader's Digest and what the bubble sounds like, the similarities of like tempo and notation. A little bit of humor about, fart technology. But in any case, so like, the bubble likewise is not limited to a little bit about, proper English grammatical composition and teleprompting. Yeah, notice a better bubble, teleprompting, speed reader, magazine. Yeah, it's kind of like a teleprompting. Yeah, bubblicious portfolio. That is an awesome bubblicious portfolio. Are you dyslexic? Yeah. Yeah, so like anyway, so like in any case, so like the thing with this is that a little bit of humor about that, and on the Concord, it's almost like now it's like the Freddie Prinze Chico stick of a ethnic background. Yet the thing about great expectations, and it seemed to be the categorization of like a catalyst at the time, and the size of the ads. Great Expectations, like known as a dating service, okay, known as of a high society dating service. Meeting the requirements of the high society on the Concord. The Concord being also like, Christian terminology of the concordance, or the humor of like proper digestion, the Con Air thing about it as well, or are you dyslexic kind of thing about it, yeah. And the thing about it is, it seems to present that meeting the requirements of the high society on the Concord. The Concord breaking the sound barrier is what the deal is, okay. But anyway, so it seemed to be like, the presidential inaugural ball seemed to be almost like the Wilson Phillips song, It's Clearer Than Water, My Love Can't Be Stronger, and No One Is Better For Me. I mean, it's almost like, Clearer Than Water would be like the bubble. And I mean, the Michael Jackson, his connectivity of like Houston Harris and Egypt, and what he's about. And all that choreography and the video like a Billie Jean being like, hotstop technology, yet the thing of the toes in a plateau, and a color code seemed to be ultimately like a Lockheed Martin atonement of like Green Acres, and describing the intersecting axis, and it seemed to be, 2 points and 3 lines, and 1 point, and then 2 lines of 2 intersecting axes, and it seemed to be dun, 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 to be exactly the thing that you just heard, like Green Acres. Dun, 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 dun. And that is 3-2-3. The points and lines and forwards and backwards, it sounds like the Green Acres. I mean, the way reading what like I put on a wall based on only alignments, only because of a shelf, and like a wall just having like beige paint, the color of sand. And, me thinking about, studying linguistics and alphanumerics, and ultimately it led to, the Arctic Circle to the right side of the Ohio Silver stainless steel toilet as a head east point of view, yet at the same time, 5 eccentric triangles that overlap at certain points in the television series Leave Without a Trace. And, I mean, like I went ahead and traced all my work about that one particular day, that thing of County Road 45, Angleton, Texas. That seemed to be the thing in my mind of the television series, Leave Without a Trace. Like I did that, okay? Like I traced virtually the entire wall of like a bunch of alignments, and some digitized presence of what the United States would look like as a digitized square format with some rectangles and circles, ultimately being some idea of a UFO sighting, leaving in circle impressions in a field of circles, yet intersecting axes at a head east point of view, giving an impression of an intersecting axis at a 90-degree, and an arrow directing like southeast to like what would be in the Houston area. That's, Galveston County, the alphanumeric 213, or the Apple iPhone SE, and, somewhere between the ERISA statute and the IRA, the remaining letters of those 2 acronyms is like the SE and the AOL thing about Apple and Oracle. Yeah, so like, a lot about that, but I wanted to include that about the Michael Jackson off the wall, because off the wall seemed to be about that telepathic blueprint of Lockheed Martin, yet Orion performance monitoring and a song by the Fifth Dimension up in the air in a beautiful balloon, leading ultimately to the colors of a rainbow and the cover of the book, Orion Performance Monitor with the hot air balloons, and ultimately the colors of a rainbow in Fort Stockton, Texas, and AOL as Orion, and then Arian, and Arian, and ultimately all the stuff about American Idol going beyond local area network of internet protocol of American Idol, presenting, you know, like a pilot that doesn't require a pilot's license but flies and has the aeronautics and flies, you know, and it's not the issue of being, you know, anything other than accepted as even as a glider, as an American Idol. But the thing with it is that it still presents, you know, the thing about it, in that way, going beyond maritime law of, you know, local area networks of internet protocol of maritime law, and going beyond that, it seemed to be the thing about aviation, the FCC, even AAA, and, you know, the thing about all that stuff about signal strength and aviation and aeronautics that way, even VSAT communications. So I wanted to include that because it seemed to be that one song in the video of Michael Jackson, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. It's like the presidential inaugural ball. Yet terminology of Bubblicious portfolio, a bubble. One of them is a bubble. It's like, I think it's whatever it is, it looks like glass, okay? But in space, you know, what looks like a round ball that's glass and transparent, it's like water in outer space. It's like floating, and it's almost like the Wilson Phillips song, it's clearer than water, my love can't be stronger. It's like knowing that about water in outer space it looks like space exploration, and the color code even of, you know, Michael Jackson and all the presidential inaugural balls, seemingly ultimately, you know, the thing about, in my mind, William Jefferson Clinton and Al Gore and Chevy Chase hosting the 1992 presidential inaugural ball, and the transition after that into the George W. Bush and how Dr. Pepper represents space exploration, yet the carbon footprint and the ingredients in the 20 and the 23 ingredients being the additives, preservatives, and byproducts of something of military. And what the way I said, the W of like George W. Bush and the 23, knowing all this information is ultimately, you know, Dr. Pepper and 23, and the W applied beyond, you know, the thought of, in the beginning was the Word was God, and the Word is God, and the Boolean thing about sequencing characterization is such a six of like a digital audio, being the thing about the Word of, in the beginning was the Word was God, and the Word is God. Then God said, let there be light. And it seemed to be the distinguish the difference between MP3 and MP4 format. Even Michael Jackson's video involving what looks to be, you know, like the bubble, which is terminology of like the New York Stock Exchange, being the bubble, and it's like a trend, yet at the same time it's like GMAC raising the bar, or, you know, the thing, a little bit of humor about, you know, the thing about the, you know, Pinocchio, and because we here at Colonial Penn have changed our name to the Amish Artesian Communists, adjusting a Pinocchio barcode, only to discover that Annette Penicillo is Pinocchio. So, like, you know, and a little bit about that, you know, M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E, why? Because we like you? Or is it like, or is it really, I like the Sprite in you, and the color codes of like Sprite and British Petroleum, or the thing about jurisprudence, ultimately, the province of a pastel green, even a pastel green of ambience, yet of night vision, a color code of even night vision measured in luminance. It's really measuring density, but really it's considered both density and yet luminance. In any case, so like, and that's the thing about why it seems to be that white is the only color that can be considered both a pastel and not a pastel. And it seems to be like even the Univision's thing about the three pastels and the black in the beginning of a rainbow black dot drum head, and now it seems to be still the now thing about an aquarium power white dot drum head, and like a double bass drummer, and a hypothetical metaphor, and being above, you know, the thought of maritime law, of a hypothetical metaphor, of a double bass drummer, and what the front lines of the big trunks mean to surfing the internet. I mean, really, and you know, think about, you know, a forecast, and, you know, the thing, ultimately, you know, the hypothetical metaphor of a double bass drummer, ultimately, you know, like two basses and four toms being like the Alpha 6, and local audio production involving, instruments is automatically digital audio now. And now it's the Boolean with the 23 rearranged with the W's like blue wing without the G, but being venue in Geneva, Switzerland seemed to be the thing of the Bluebird bus that ultimately gets to the being without the G and the being venue being of the human civil rights. It seemed to be more so of being itemized going through a circuit, more so on the expenditure side involving the way I see it, because that was one of the locations I was taken to. And it only seemed to be the Bureau of Printing and Engraving that identified being venue with a rectangle, and only because of the incoherence, division would be the only thing of a memory, and including another location on the west side of Houston, identified as the word plaza on a rectangle, a huge rectangle like engraved deal, in the alphanumerics of 56, plaza being 56 or drum, or the question why, or paper, and all the stuff that seemed to be the 56 is 10, and, the thing about the being venue. And Vantage Love 30 being, the thing about 30 being even the word being without the G. I had written something on ARO involving the 1040-10-1041 itemization G 190.2 at no 76 Osmim. It's a bunch of alphanumerics ultimately about Commonwealth terminology of like international financial management because of the word globalization. It's like, so the word in virtually every single book involving international financial management and globalization, almost like a domiciled head of household. Like the toilet. Yet at the same time, Commonwealth, it ultimately leads tracing the history of terminology in international financial management will ultimately lead, even to the outhouse and like manure and really other factors in identifying somewhere like a timeline of terminology, even, the thought of like sanitation. You may have even heard of certain factors that would identify maybe even a color code as an oasis of love, The thing of it is it refers to terminology, even in color code. This seems to be, reflecting, the thought of that in that way. But anyway, I wanted to clue that. It's already going on like 47 minutes and like 18 seconds right now. And I'm going to do another. But I just wanted to include this much. I don't know if I'm going to upload this. I might, but I'm going to do another of the same of what I'm talking about right now. But I want to include all that right there. So, there it is, okay? Yeah.